Hi, I'm Gabriel, and today I'm going to be talking about vocal fry, uptalk, and other aspects of so-called Valley Girl speech. So, what are vocal fry and uptalk? Vocal fry is creaky voice. As we just learned, it's kind of complicated, but it's like basically when your vocal folds are vibrating more slowly and irregularly, you can hear each vibration. It sounds kind of creaky. And also, it often accompanies a lower tone, lower intonation, basically. And then uptalk is just when declarative sentences have a rising intonation at the end. And while in English we often use that with questions, especially yes or no questions, that's never characterized as uptalk, pretty much. So first of all, I just want to talk about what vocal fry and uptalk are viewed as from like a very quick glance. These are things that I've heard about them, words that I've heard associated with them, and just things that I saw quickly at the beginning of my research. First, very importantly, vocal fry and uptalk are often associated with younger girls or adolescent girls or women. They're seen as basically an indicator of somebody who's apathetic, who's not very smart, not educated, who's trying to act rich. Often they're seen as irritating, annoying, and even triggering. People get very angry about vocal fry, especially, and uptalk, actually. And also some people have characterized them as dangerous and unhealthy, even an epidemic. So, let's go a little more in depth. These are just some more specific sources that I found. These first two videos really characterize uptalk or vocal fry as first mind virus epidemic. This one, he is a little less angry, but he acknowledges that it's pretty commonly used and may be perceived in different ways. But he also talks about how, it's something, it is a mind virus, he calls it, and he frames it with this knowledge and language of it being something that a lot of people are bothered by. In this second video, she is literally begging for people to stop using it. And she specifically implores women and high-end fashion designers. And this person actually also notes that it's a learned behavior. That is echoed in this video, which is a clip from Loudermouth, where a man harasses and yells at a barista who's using vocal fry, calling it an affectation, calling it something she's put on to sound apathetic. This is a masterclass on how to stop using upspeak, which is just another word for uptalk. And just some more sources about how people are really bothered by it. I think that just a simple Google search will turn out a lot of results on people being annoyed by it, people trying to call it out as fake, people saying that it has all these indicators of, apathy or richness or being a young girl, whatever it may be. All very interesting. And lastly, I do want to say that I've heard people echo these perceptions. This isn't far away from me at all. I've heard family members mock women for using vocal fry and basically saying it makes them sound stupid. I've heard friends do the same thing. Interestingly, I've also heard friends mock what it seems to be gay men for using vocal fry and uptalk as well, to a lesser extent, in my personal experience. And just things that I've noticed, things to look out for. It's a very strong irritation, and it's almost always directed at women and girls. It associates them with, again, idiots, being irritating, being young. And it's a very essentialized problem. It sounds like people try to make it sound like it's an unnatural way of speaking as opposed to another more natural way of speaking. And I think it says a lot about how we view different ways of speaking and linguistic phenomena in general, as well as women. And we'll get to all of those, not to worry. But first, I do want to talk about how speech coaching and speech pathologists handle this. So if you look up vocal fry and uptalk, you will probably run into a lot of speech pathologist websites. I have a couple in the sources of this presentation. And they're interesting. They tend to not be too extreme, but it really depends. It very much varies. But there's definitely patterns of they're all trying to fix vocal fry and uptalk, whether that be acknowledging that some of it is okay and some of it needs to be fixed, or saying that all of it is irritating. And you get the sense that, though a lot of these websites are going based off of like questions, people have come to them saying, I want to fix vocal fry. I mean, that's what speech pathologists do. They like help people with problems that they self-identify. And I think that that's really interesting, because whether it's people feeling like they're not another thing that was talked about a lot is the lack of confidence that apparently vocal fry and uptalk betray, and people feel like they're not confident enough, and they go to speech pathologists, or speech pathologists tell them that they're not sounding confident enough because of these things. These are very much problems, is the overarching theme, although it's a little bit more complicated than that. I will also say there's a bit of a misunderstanding of linguistic fact. Some of these websites definitely act like vocal fry is dangerous. Uptalk and vocal fry make it so that you can't understand people. Things like that, which are interesting. And these websites also mainly acknowledge the effects that these habits of speaking have on people, and then very specific ways on how to change those. I think it's really interesting that so deeply associated with these types of speaking is the fact that they are a problem, they need to be fixed. So who uses it, and when do we care? So this is actually a really interesting point. While currently American women use vocal fry and uptalk a lot more than American men, when vocal fry was first of all, vocal fry, creaky voice, is used in other languages, as we've seen. When vocal fry or creaky voice was first identified in English, it was actually identified in like hyper-masculine RP English. Think of like a British villain, like, precisely, that's exactly what I was thinking of. That's like very strong vocal fry. It's now obviously in America more used by women, but it is still currently used by RP men. And you don't see people making a fuss about it in that case. And while men in America use it less, we still in fact do use it. I use it, I would say, like, more often than many men. If you listen to this presentation, I'm using it. I don't really use uptalk, TBH. Uptalk is more associated with women, though again, many people have always used it. However, we only judge women for using vocal fry. This is a very important point. This is supported by studies. Employers tend to see women who are using vocal fry as less educated, less capable of doing jobs. There's several studies on this. People in general tend to have a very negative perception of vocal fry. While there are more specific nuances to this, some people do actually prefer vocal fry statistically. That's tends to be very specific groups, and generally the overall perception of American women using vocal fry is negative, as like we've seen, as is suggested by all of our associations with it. And again, the note that it's often seen as an affect, or as in like an affected like sound. Vocal fry and uptalk are both seen as false and put on. I also want to talk about this article. I think this gets at another angle that sometimes people try to attack vocal fry specifically, but also uptalk with. This is an article in The Guardian from Naomi Wolf. She's a feminist in the third wave, and she's writing in 2015. And I do want to give a little context on her. She is a, like, COVID vaccine theorist now, but, like a conspiracy theorist, but, I think that should inform how we see her, but also this is 2015. So in this article, she's talking about how vocal fry has become like culturally basically placed on women, and it's become a cultural expectation of women to use it in order to undermine women's authority. She describes vocal fry as intensely annoying, and that women are using things like vocal fry and uptalk nowadays more often because kind of as a cultural recognition of their power and to try to diminish that power. And she's basically talking about how individual women need to stop doing that. Her argument is that they're basically disempowering themselves by using vocal fry and uptalk, which makes them sound less confident, more insecure, and things like that. And she's also basically in this saying that these are false modes of speaking, that they are being put on, that they are, which is, a pattern that we'll talk about. But I think that some of this argument comes from an interesting point, and, certainly women's messages are trivialized. However, I think that the issue in this argument comes with this assumption that, first of all, that this is the only time that women's speech has been criticized, which is very much not true. And the assumption that there is something essential about how apparently irritating and unconfident, apathetic sounding that vocal fry and uptalk are. The reality is there's nothing essential about that. There have always been people who use vocal fry and uptalk, and in fact there have always been people who use them and not been called annoying or irritating or whatever. Again, look at RP men, look at other languages. I think the real issue here is that we're looking at some version of the feminist double bind. The concept of a double bind, as outlined by Marilyn Fry in her piece Oppression, is a feminist concept that talks about the fact that women are not allowed to be to exist under the patriarchy. Their every move is policed. They're called wrong in whatever they do. I think that what we're seeing here is related to that, because there is nothing essential about the way that that vocal fry and uptalk are. There's nothing essential about them that says that they're annoying, that says that they're wrong, or that they sound unconfident. It's really just about people's perceptions of them. And when we tell women repeatedly, you can't talk like that, you can't talk like that, it puts them in this double bind. It makes it impossible for women to express themselves. We can even do this, I think, in Wolf's piece, under the guise of feminism and promoting feminism. I think telling women that they need to change the way they're speaking is not the right solution to this. I think that under the patriarchy, there will always be a new criticism for women and women's voices. And what we need to be doing is instead questioning why we find these modes of speech suddenly so irritating now that women are doing them. And I also want to talk a little bit about how the effects of vocal fry on perceptions of women are nuanced. I said that they're already, particularly with vocal fry, they're overwhelmingly negative, but with vocal fry and uptalk, they might have slightly different meanings, depends on who you're talking to. Obviously, I already said employers see them as less educated. People might see them as younger, more stupid, but at the same time, it might be a safety issue. Throughout history, women have needed to fit into whatever the current definition of femininity is, or face criticism or violence. And especially in a situation like the workplace where they might not be taken seriously. And I think this does contribute to that concept of the double bind, yet again. But there's a lot of studies that I've talked about here. There's a variety of effects, and it can be difficult to decide if it's better or worse to use vocal fry or uptalk. Finally, I want to talk about these 3 sources that I looked at, which are very critical of this whole situation. And I linked them on the next slide, so please take a look at them. They're very interesting. But first of all, they talk about how vocal fry and uptalk are used by men, by other languages. They talk about this middle NPR Fresh Air episode talks about how women's voices have always been criticized, and how this is just the new way of doing that. The Dr. Jeff Lindsay, who's this super cool linguist guy on YouTube that I love and that you should absolutely watch, talks about how there is a form of a double bind here. He doesn't use that language exactly, but basically, there is like a contradiction in the sexist logic going on here. With vocal fry, you're told that you sound, or women are told that they sound rich, they sound apathetic, they sound like a know-it-all. With uptalk, they sound dumb, uneducated, like they don't know anything, like they're not sure of themselves or not confident in anything they say. This is a double bind. This is also echoed in the Fresh Air episode. One person who's interviewed says that when she was criticized for using uptalk, she started to lower her intonation at the end of sentences, and that led to vocal fry. This is like a very clear double bind within these 2 things. You are criticized for one, and then you're criticized for the other. There's really no way for women to exist under this patriarchal system, which does not want them to speak. I think that's really what it comes down to here. Women are being told that they're not allowed to speak. No way for them to speak is suitable. And one more thing I want to touch on is this last podcast episode, which was really interesting, which again is linked on the next slide. And it's talking about how once the term vocal fry was popularized, it was quickly pathologized. Not even in a scientific way. It was talked about as if it's something truly dangerous, as if it's something that women are falling prey to and being victimized, and this is not true. It's treating this specific linguistic trend like it's something particularly evil. It's treating specifically vocal fry as if it's something that is dangerous for you, which is just a way of telling people that they can't speak the way that they're speaking. I think that it's really important to get a full view of when this became something that people were so irritated by, and the ways that people have made up lies and essentialized their irritation in this to try to justify it. Lastly, I just want to say that linguistic discrimination is kind of special the way that I see it. It's something that we are really very okay with in many situations. You see this with people being told that Black English is not professional, for example, and you see this with vocal fry and uptalk, where women are constantly criticized for just the way that they speak, even though, as we've gone over, there's nothing essential that says that that's wrong or unhealthy. There's nothing, incorrect about it. The reality is this is just a new way of criticizing women very openly that we completely allow to pass us by. I think that as linguists, we have a really important responsibility because we understand how language evolves over time. It's understood as something very ahistorical, very immortal, but that's not what it is. Language is ever changing. Women often pioneer language, in fact, and when we see that these new linguistic changes, like the rise of vocal fry more recently, or the rise of uptalk, which I think started a little bit earlier, we can understand these as things not to be extremely angry about, but as just new linguistic trends and things that may transform the entire language. And I think we can also understand people's anger at them as something that frequently happens, but which, is more based in our society's patriarchy and insistence that younger women are irrational, irritating, should not be listened to. I think that the only way for us to understand what's going on here and try to fix this is to be able to understand that language is socially situated, and that when we criticize these things, we're actually engaging in a much larger dynamic. This has not been a comprehensive presentation. I have a lot in the speaker notes, so please look into that if you're more curious. I have linked the presentation. Also, check out these specific resources. I think they're really interesting. And I also just wrote Judith Butler's name, less of a specific resource, but gender. So yeah, thank you so much.